Greetings everybody, Brother Dan Goodwin here. This is the God's Final Jubilee Ministries and www.godsfinaljubilee.com. Check out the website if you get a chance. In the studio again is my guest, Jeff Motes, author of the book, Once Upon an Apocalypse. Actually a threefold book. There are actually three of them. It's a set. And the one takes off where the other left off. If you did not watch program one, you ought to go back and watch that first and then come back to this one. But Brother Jeff and I, we talked about his new book. We got into it a little bit in the last program. And we're going to finish up in this program. This is going to be a very important show because Jeff's going to tell you what he thinks you need for some survival gear, if I can say that right. And Jeff, good to have you again in the studio.
Thank you for having me again.
Jeff is from Alabama. 5 kids, right? 3 grandkids?
3 kids and 3 grandkids.
Oh, 3 and 3. Okay. It's me that has 5. All right. And one of his sons is in the studio here. You can't see him, but he's sitting over there, making sure we keep things right here. So, fine young man, by the way. And we enjoyed our last program. I enjoyed talking to Brother Jeff about his book. I have read all 3 of them. Actually, I listened to them. You can get them on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and type in Once Upon an Apocalypse, or type in Jeff Motes. You'll find him. And you can read the back cover, check out the book, and look at it. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it in paperback, hardback, or ebook. There's an ebook. Kindle, and also the way I got it, I went to iTunes. I got an audio book where I listened in my car. So that might be something that you would like to do. If you travel a lot like I do, that's a pretty handy way to do it. So I think a very timely book. Now, this is a prophecy program, God's Final Jubilee Ministries. My main thing is I deal with end times and the rapture and how close to the end are we, things like that. And I'm always telling you, you need to be ready for the rapture. You need to be walking with God. You need to make sure you're born again, saved, on your way to heaven. You need to be watching. The Bible says, watch, for you know not when the Son of Man comes. We're to be watching and waiting. I don't think the rapture is supposed to catch us off guard. I think we're supposed to know that it's nigh, even at the door. So what does Brother Jeff here, what does his book have to do with prophecy? A lot. Because I think what's in his book, even though it's not a prophecy book, prophecy's mentioned in there. In fact, the characters in the book, if I recall right, Jeff, didn't some of them ask you, do you think the rapture's happened and we're in the tribulation?
Well,
I think that's
in the
there.
end times, yes.
Yeah, so it's a book based a little bit with the Christian theme. The main actors are all Christians. They pray and they talk about the Lord. Very interesting. There's some very providential things that I was telling Jeff that I liked in the book. There's one instance where one of the characters sees a pickup coming the other way, and he doesn't know, but his future wife is in that pickup. Now I'm giving something away, in the book. But anyway, somebody's in that pickup. Scratch what I just said. Somebody's in that truck that he doesn't realize. And he goes back and winds up saving her life, giving away some more stuff in the book. But anyway, providential. And they mention that, how God must have just watched over them and got him to that spot. So there's a lot of that type of stuff in here, but it's not a book just for Christians. If somebody's not a Christian, this would be like reading a novel off a bookstore, at any bookstore in the country. So Brother Jeff, we're going to take off where we left off. I got a couple more questions for you. By the way, is your book available in any bookstores? Is your book in the bookstores?
They're not in any major brick and mortar bookstores. There are a few small specialty stores.
All right, so it's got to be somebody off the grid that you get to know.
Yeah, kind of a preparedness store.
Lifeway, my books are not in any bookstores.
They're not in Lifeway, but any of those stores can order the books.
Right.
And they won't be ordering from Amazon. They'll be ordering from a distributor. I have a different distributor that handles non-Amazon sales.
Okay.
But any bookstore can get. I have a lot of people that get them from Barnes and Nobles, and Books A Million, places like that.
All right. Now, just real quickly, because maybe somebody's watching, but they didn't watch the last program. Just in 30 seconds, what is an EMP?
An EMP is an electrical magnetic pulse. And the reference for the story, it's about an EMP attack, electrical magnetic pulse attack, on the United States. And what that is a high altitude nuclear explosion.
Could be done with a satellite, I think.
It could be done, as long as it's a nuclear weapon of sufficient size to create a powerful EMP, then it, depending on how high it is and where it's at geographically over the United States, it could envelop a very large percentage of the continent, basically destroying electronics.
Right. So your book is about, it's fiction. Your book is all fiction, but it's based around facts, that the way things could happen. All your survival stuff that you talk about in there is real stuff.
Yes.
You talk about different guns and night vision and stuff like that, all real stuff.
Right, and it's interweaved into the story, so it's not just all of a sudden giving you a manual on this or that. It's written into the story as part of the story.
Right. So it makes it very interesting. I know I didn't read the book. I listened to it on audio. And I'm telling you, it was as exciting as any book I've ever read or listened to. It made you couldn't wait to get to the next chapter to see what's going to happen with what you just saw. So very interesting. So the book takes off with basically a couple of families, a couple of different people. They're driving their car. I think both events both families, they're both driving a car in different places. Yes. And the EMP goes off. They don't know it. All they know is their car just shut off. They pull over the side of the road. And that's day one, as you call it in the book.
The first, yes, right. Well, actually, that's the day.
The day. It's called The Day. Yes. All right. So, by the way, the whole 3 books take place in 13 or 14 days.
14 days.
All right. So it's amazing how fast things happen in the book, and I've asked Brother Jeff about that, and he believes that should this event happen, that it will happen fast, and he gives an example of Katrina. Hurricane Katrina, everybody knows about that. The riots and the stealing and the killing, all that took place down in New Orleans, that all took place in a day, just a matter of days.
Yes, very quick.
So if an EMP goes off, you better be ready for some bad times, and you better be ready for it quick. So there's something you brought out in the book, Jeff. Let's talk about this a little bit. It's not mentioned much, but a couple of times. And by the way, it was in the back of my mind. I'm wondering what's going on with the government. Remember, there's no radio. You can't turn on Fox News. You can't even turn CNN. Not that you'd want to, but you can't. There's nowhere to go to find out what's going on. So I was wondering, what's happening in Washington, D.C.? What's happening at the Capitol? The EMP's gone off. What's happening in the world? Now, only a couple times in the series did you bring out something about the government. What was your purpose in that? Tell a little bit about that.
Well, I wrote the books to help people prepare.
Okay.
And I think everyone should prepare, whether you're a Christian or non-Christian, Republican, Democrat, liberal, socialist, whatever. Because I think a prepared person is a better person.
And he's good for everybody else.
It's good for everybody else. So there's no politics in my books. Now, there's no political parties mentioned at all. Though I do in the book to kind of set up possibly a future storyline, mention a coup in the government.
Okay.
So, and that's just a very brief mention. It's mentioned in the first book, and I think it's also mentioned in the second book, just briefly. And so it's setting up a potential different story. But it's a non-political book. It doesn't matter your political leanings. You're not going to be offended by what's in these pages. Tell us a
little bit about what that was about. What was going on that caused that?
Well, basically, and I think this is a very real possibility. If an event like this was to occur, the government would probably try to clamp down on your civil liberties, become very restrictive, and that kind of sets up martial law, which leads us into
dictatorship,
to biblical prophecies, though that's not covered in the book. But the government is basically going to was trying to seize personal assets, all your guns, your food supplies over a certain number period.
And I believe that's already written into martial law things in emergencies. The government has given themselves the right to come get what you have for the good of all.
Right, and there's executive orders in place that would do those things. And grants, the government gives grants to state agencies and police departments, and they're not always just free. They all have some strings attached to them.
Yeah.
But in the story, I have a group of more patriot-minded high government officials that do a coup.
Because the president was going the liberal direction.
Well, he was going the unconstitutional direction, and clamping down on personal liberty, and that.
And I think in the story then some generals, some military people went in and took over.
That's right.
But there's not much about it. I just want to bring that up.
It's not much. I was trying to set up possibly a different storyline later, but it's non-political.
And that's a whole other book right there of what happens with the government when these things, not if these things, but when possibly something like this happens.
These books are looking at a couple of families and what they do to survive. It doesn't really look at the big picture, the world picture, or the national scale, because what's in this book is what's going to happen to you or to your neighbor. But you and your neighbor are all over the country.
Yeah.
Going to be people just like you.
And you think, like we mentioned in the last show, imagine living in New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, in these big, huge mega cities. I mean, it's going to be bad.
It's going to be tough. There's something in here. So, I mean, if you read it and think about the principles that's laid out in here in the mindset, that will help people in those cities as well. And
the things that you talk about, the survival gear and the survival mentality, will help in any situation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, very interesting books. I enjoyed them very much. I want my audience to consider getting a copy. Go to Amazon or go to his Facebook page. We'll have a link for some of these on in the YouTube thing there. But I just wanted you to know I read them. I found them very helpful, very interesting, and yes, entertaining as well. There were 2 love stories at least in the book, and I got to quit giving stuff away, so I'll stop with that. But very interesting. After you've read some of it, you won't want to stop. You won't want to put it down. But I like Brother Jeff's motive. His motive wasn't just to sell books. His motive was he's trying to prepare people for not just an EMP, but for anything, any emergency or event that should, like a hurricane or a tornado, earthquake. Yellowstone could blow. They say Yellowstone, there's a huge volcano underneath that. That thing could split the country in half. There's any number of things. Asteroid could do. There's any number of things. An earthquake could bring great struggle and problems to the country or to your neighborhood. Do you have any food to eat? Do you have enough food to last you more than a day or 2 days or a week? I got a good friend I was telling Brother Jeff about. I've got a friend, he's got 6 months worth of MREs, is that what they're called, the military food? He's got 6 months of that, so I'm going to be looking for him in an emergency. And so anyway, let's see, what else we're going to get to here. 14 days, the books take place around 14 days, basically 2 families it revolves around. I wanted to ask you this, Jeff. I get a feeling when I read the book, I get a feeling that you understand what you're talking about. I get a feeling you understand guns very well, that you're very astute with guns. I get the feeling you understand self-defense pretty well. And I get a feeling you understand these survival modes that you talk about, that it's not just something you wrote in a book, it's something that you've got up here.
Well, I've been studying this for a long time, Brother Dan. It's been part of my life for a very long time. I'm normally a quiet person and I don't like to bring attention to myself, but I had friends that I felt like needed to know more about being prepared, so that's the reason I wrote the book. Initially was for my family and friends, and then it reached out. I mean, I've had people from all over the country and actually different parts of the world contact me about it. I think it can make a difference. If you're thinking about being prepared for difficult times, this will give you a mindset or describe a mindset for you and possibly give you a path with some information that will help you move in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, now in the book, I noticed, I was very excited, to be honest with you, I was very excited when I got to a chapter in the book I don't remember where they are, but it's John and Jill together. Yep. They're in this room and they're recovering from some injuries, and they're going through their packs. And John is unpacking his, and he's showing Jill item by item. He's going through that pack, telling her what he has. Now I know now why you did that. You did that because your purpose for the book is to tell me how to get prepared and tell those out there how to get prepared. So I was pretty excited. In fact, I made a copy of that page. I have a list of those items, and I'm already working on getting some. Over on my shelf, I already showed you my Glock 19, and I'm looking for a Kel-Tec 2000. That takes the same magazine as the Glock 19. I learned that from the book. So there's other things that you mentioned there that I do not have, and I feel like I should have. Now maybe we can't get everything that on the list, but there's some pretty important things, and I was hoping you could share with the viewers some of those things that are in that list. And I know Jill had her bag. Right. These are a bag that they carried with them in the car, right, in case of emergency.
Yeah. How often do you get in your car, drive 50 miles to a big city if you live in a small city, and think nothing about it?
Yeah.
You know, you go with your tennis shoes, or maybe you go with your Sunday shoes on, and if something happens that prevents you from driving back home, how are you going to get home?
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of the packs. Personally, I don't go anywhere.
Now, when you say the pack, he's talking about like a knapsack. You know, in Maine, we call it a knapsack. Everybody's got a different name for it. You call it a pack.
I call it a pack. It's packed with essential supplies to keep you alive for a period of time. Now, as you build a pack, a personal, a lot of people will call them a get-home bag. You know, you're in your vehicle, you need water, you need a variety of things, but it's all based on what I call the axiom of threes. And it goes something like this. You can survive 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter, 3 minutes without air, and 3 seconds without a defensive weapon.
Wow.
Now that's a generalization. So you're not going to die exactly at 3 weeks if you don't have food, but you may very well be so weak that you can't feed yourself. And it's a generalization to give people an idea of the hierarchy of survival. That's not unique with me. This has been around on the internet and survival forums for a number of years. So as you build a pack, or as you build any kind of preparedness plan, if you'll keep those things in mind as you develop that. You know, the first thing you need to take care of is my personal protection. The second thing is I need to make sure I have breathable air. And then shelter. You know, in most places in the country you can go outside for days and not have a problem. But if you happen to be the wrong time of the year and it's freezing rain outside, and you don't have anything but a t-shirt and a pair of shorts on, your life's in danger if you can't find shelter.
And you mentioned out in the other room when you and I were talking, you mentioned that clothing is part of shelter.
Clothing is part of your shelter.
I never thought of it that way.
You know,
that means we ought to have something in the car when we travel, when we go somewhere. We ought to have a sweater or a sweatshirt or something in there.
A couple years back, it made national news because it was kind of unique in Birmingham and Atlanta. They had an ice storm, and it come in and shut the interstates down.
Yeah. And
people were stuck on the interstate for over a day.
Yeah.
Freezing cold, and a lot of them had nothing. They didn't have a flashlight, they didn't have blankets, they didn't have water, they didn't have anything.
And a lot of them probably had an eighth of a tank of gas, so you're...
Right, I mean, and that should have been a wake-up call for a lot of people. So shelter is very important. Now, your car can be shelter. You know, it can shelter you from rain. It can shelter you from the cold if you got fuel in it.
Yeah.
Or it can shelter you from the heat if you got fuel in it. But those are some things. So the hierarchy of survival, or as I call it, the axiom of threes, you know, should play in mind. You know, you need personal protection. You need to have breathable air. You need to be able to have a shelter of some type, which includes your clothes. And you need to have water. And food is, you know, we think that's very important, and it is important, but it's the least important of everything. water. Do you have water in your vehicle? And if you don't, where are you going to get water if you're broke down for multiple hours? So that's all something to think about.
And you know, when I get in the car now, ever since I've read your books, this stuff's on my mind.
Yeah. Well,
I'm thinking, all right, I'm 2 hours from home. What if that EMP goes off? I'm no longer 2 hours from home. I'm days from home if I had to walk.
Yeah, and I think a rough, if you were trying to guesstimate the time it would take, comparing it to driving time, if you're an hour away from home driving, you're probably a week from home walking. So, that's something to consider. And what are you going to do? You can't carry a week's worth of water. A gallon of water weighs 8 pounds, and most people need at least a gallon of water to drink.
Yeah, a day.
A day, correct. And so, what are you going to do to treat water? Now, I'm not sure about here in Kentucky. I'm pretty sure it's similar to Alabama, that there's water everywhere. But you might not want to drink it straight out of the creek, because you're probably going to get some kind of bug or something floating in the water, and it may make you sick.
Yeah.
And then if you end up with some intestinal problems, then you'll dehydrate even worse. So you need to have ways to treat water. So I mean, those things are very important. That's covered in the book, and the logic behind it is there.
And I noticed right at the beginning of the book, the water, how big that was. Yeah. I noticed. I mean, you better have water when you read the book, because you're thinking about water a lot.
Well, you should have water. You should have water at home.
Yeah.
If an EMP was to happen, the water plants are going to go down, because they're all controlled by computers now. PLC systems and SCADA systems that control everything. And a lot of the equipment that actually operates the motors are now electronically controlled with drive, via variable frequency drive.
Now, you had some different people in the story. Now, you had the main characters, but there were some other people. And I noticed your two main characters had a pack in the car that they were taught from their father. Of course, the one, he was taught from his father, and Jill, she was taught from her father to have some preparation, not just for an EMP, but for breakdowns or any emergency like that. They both had they had food in there, MREs and stuff like. They had what's the little candy bars you talked about?
Oh, the protein bars, and then they also had some Datrix bars.
Yep, stuff like that. Stuff that will last a long time. You can put it in the trunk of your car. And now John, here I don't want to give too much away. John had an arsenal. well,
what I put in the book is particularly book 1 is 3 different characters, 3 different mindsets, and 3 different levels of preparedness. And I tried to weave the story so you could see how that mindset and that level of preparedness impacted those characters.
Yeah.
Now, being prepared and being able to defend yourself is not just a man thing.
Right.
It's a woman thing as well. So it's just as important, for women to know this information, because they're as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, than men if something like this was to happen. One of the favorite sayings of the main character's father is he was preparing his daughter because he didn't want his daughter to have to depend upon a man for protection, because a man may not be around.
That's right.
And bad things can happen. Everyone needs to be prepared, not just the husband. If the family's together and the husband is the only one that's prepared, or only one knows how to defend the family, something happens to him, then the mother or the wife has to take over. So it's very important, I think, for both men and women. And actually, my first audience, as I was writing it, was mostly women. So I tried to put this story in there to drive the point home to them that they need to prepare.
Yeah. Now, we only got a few minutes left here. We're almost out of time. Just briefly, a few things that a person ought to have, like in a pack, as you call it, or a bag, something you carry in your car with you. What's a few items? Well, first let's start with a personal defense. So you need to be able to protect yourself, and it depends on where you live and what your philosophies are. You may have a firearm. If you don't believe in firearms, or your state doesn't allow you to have a firearm, maybe you'll have a can of mace. Mm-hmm. If you can't have a can of mace, maybe you've got a knife, or maybe you've got
a taser of some type, something that you can defend yourself with if you're attacked. And maybe you can't have any of those things. Then you need to learn how to use your hands to defend yourself. After that, then the second thing is air. And in most cases, unless there's a nuclear or biological attack, then the air is going to be okay, unless there's particulates in the air. So you need air filters. You can buy those at Walmart right now for about $2 a piece. All right, the third thing on our list is shelter. So you need something to shelter yourself with, which your shelter includes your clothes. Anything that protects is between you and the outside environment is shelter. So that's your clothes.
So you need some extra clothes.
You need some extra clothes, and you need clothes for the time that your bag is in the car. And when the time, I mean in the season. So if you're in the winter, and most of the time you don't need it. At least in Alabama, a long sleeve shirt's mostly what all you need. But overnight it gets pretty cold sometimes. So you need to think about those things. If you're going to be out in the rain, you're going to need a rain jacket. So think about those things too as you shelter your body from the environment that's around you. The next item is water. So you can keep water in your vehicle and keep it rotated out, because the water inside a hot car will go bad over a period of time. But also a water filter or some water treatment tabs, so that way you can pick your water up as you go. If you find a creek, you can pump the water out and filter it and drink it that way. And then also some food. Now, food inside a vehicle will not last forever because the temperature is very hot.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep that in mind. Get some long-term food that will take the temperatures, but then you'll have to rotate it out over a period of time. So keep in mind, you need to be able to defend yourself. You need to be able to breathe air. You need to protect your body from the environment. You need to have water, and you need to have food. Now, you're also going to have to be mobile. So you're going to have to walk. If an EMP was to occur and your car goes down, you're going to have to walk. So you think about your clothing, or the clothing that you have in your car. You're going to need to be able to use that to get home. So sandals would probably not be a good thing to put in your bug out bag, but maybe a good pair of tennis shoes would be. But if you wear tennis shoes all the time, maybe you wouldn't need to put them in your bag.
Yeah. But that's a good list. That's just the start. But that's all. That's all stuff that I don't think we think about.
And I give two lists in the book. One, Jill's pack, which Jill is a moderately prepared person. She's prepared, but she's not a prepper type person. She's just a regular person.
She did have a Glock, though.
She had a Glock. Her dad taught her that. And there's lots of women that have firearms. Yeah. I know many that do, and it's a very good thing, I think. And then there's another list for a very well prepared pack. So you can build your get home bag for not a whole lot of money, depends on what you want to put in it, or you can spend whatever kind of money you want to put in it. It just depends on what you want to prepare for and how deep you want to get into it.
All right, we're talking to Jeff Motes here in the studio. He's written 3 books, a three-book series of basically revolving around 13, 14 days of an EMP attack. Very interesting, very thought-provoking, very scary if you get right down and think about what this could do to our country or to your neighborhood. And he gives some intertwined in the story is how these people survived, the things that they had, and very interesting. So, Jeff, is there another book in the works?
Yes, I'm working on a 4th book, which will...
Does it go with these?
Yes, it goes with this.
By the way, it left off good to where if you didn't do another book, it ended good. You hate them ones that end and well, what's going to happen next?
Right. You really need the 3 books to get this complete story, but I'm also going to continue it on because the story is about families getting home. And even the home part, which is the 2nd and 3rd books, the main characters aren't home. They're just across the county. Yeah. But they're still having trouble getting home.
And it was like being in another state. It was like they were forever away.
20 miles becomes a very long distance.
I learned the importance of a bicycle. Well, I don't want to give more story away, but you don't think, who wants a bicycle today? But after an EMP, a bicycle becomes a very expensive, very sought after thing.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Jeff, it's been great. We've gone over again, and but that's my life story. I wanted to go 25 minutes again, and we're already over 30 minutes, so we're going to shut her off there. But Jeff Motes, author, I highly recommend the book. There's some rough stuff in it. I'm not going to lie to you, but there's some rough stuff coming to this country. And I think we need to be prepared for it. So go online and look up his book on Amazon or on his Facebook page. Just type in "Once Upon an Apocalypse" or type in his name, Jeff Motes. You'll find him. If you have any trouble, contact me. I'll help you get in touch with him. But I think you'd enjoy the book. I think it'd be a help to you. I think it'd be a help to your church, your family, your friends. And that's why he wrote it. He wrote it because he felt like a lot of his family and friends were not prepared for things. And honestly, who is? How many people are prepared for something today? So anyway, you're watching the God's Found Jubilee program. I believe this is an important item as far as prophecy is concerned, because even though this is not the tribulation period that he's talking about in the book, it could be. This certainly could be a part of the tribulation, or this could be a lead up to what's coming. And very helpful book. Jeff, I want to thank you for writing these books. Thank you for coming into the studio today and the last program we did. Appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir.
And I got to meet your son over here. And we'll do some more shows with Jeff sometime in the future. I'm sure he'll fly me down to his state sometime and take me out to eat. And so anyway, we're going to shut her off here. And I hope you'll go online and look for his books. You'll want to get all three of them if you can. And I think you'll be very happy that you got them. I think they'll be very exciting. It also has audio books where you can listen to them on your iPod, and that's what I did. So it's got Kindle, paperback, audio, whatever floats your boat, as they say up in Maine. And so we'll let you go, and God bless you, and we'll check in with you next time.